This was a rage-filled day. I was angry today. In fact, I was nursing a bit of a quiet rage all day. I had to go to the clinic today. Didn't have a choice. There are days where you can't just blow that stuff off. Sanders kind of learned that the hard way. I've learned that the hard way over the course of my life. And you pick and choose what you think you can do. This was one of those days where I had to take my ass to the doctor. I watched for 3 hours or so media lavish what basically was propaganda to an audience dealing with the issue in Syria. I watched them talk about the story. I watched them show the intrusion into the area of Turkish forces and lavish Trump abandoned our allies. Trump abandoned our allies. Trump abandoned our allies. I can't believe Trump abandoned our allies. Look at all of these Pentagon officials who were shocked. Look at all of the media who were shocked. All of these millionaires, none of which are willing to put on a tin cap and go to Syria to fight. None of them. Not one. I watch media talk about China and the Houston Rockets. Zero empathy, zero honesty in a contextual way with any level of historic or any level of just honest engagement of the issue. Liars. All of them. And then I watch Ellen and then Tulsi defend an out-of-touch, tone-deaf celebrity that essentially defended a war criminal. Aloha for war criminals. I love it. Bush was responsible for 1 million people dying, let alone 4,000 American lives, let alone $4 trillion, let alone 18 years of drone bombing and killing. Do you realize that many of those drone bombings, some of those cases had 90%? Well, we had no idea who we were even murdering. Obama dropped 20,000 bombs in the last year in office. And that was, 2016? And we had been in those countries for all of those years bombing and killing, supporting terrorists in many respects. Because at a certain point, we started using the fact that after smashing the Middle East, we could get through certain neocon policies and use that as a justification to knock down other governments. We are infinitely more responsible than anybody else on this planet for the creation of ISIS. And yet, when it suited our purpose, we use those terrorists for our ends. Aloha to war criminals. Just to make a point, we don't mend the country by giving a pass to people who was responsible for mass murder. There is nobody else that you can think of over the last 40, 50 years that have been responsible for more deaths than George Bush. And the idea that just because the International Criminal Court wasn't able to get their hands on him, and just because he wasn't dragged before The Hague, and just because our country essentially gave him a pass, he doesn't need to be rehabilitated. Nor do I need to be told aloha when I criticize somebody for trying to do so. This has been a rage-filled day. Reality, however, has a weird way of bringing you to attention of sorts. There's a woman who I've avoided for months because I have a plaguing guilt associated with my interaction with her. I was right. She was entirely wrong. And yet I went after her full bore, unrestrained and unhinged, in almost a split second. Literally flipped on a dime in a conversation about Iraq. She was saying something that wasn't true, and I went after her for it. I was wrong. Not on the point, but in the overarching scheme of things. My wife would say I would prefer to lose a friend than a fight. It depends on the friend, depends on the fight. You can't always necessarily think about that stuff in the specific moment. It's one of those things that you kind of reflect on after the fact. I had a conversation with her today while the media went on talking about the war. And I apologized to her, and she accepted. I mean, I had apologized before, but I kind of made this point. Look, I have a plaguing guilt. I tried to avoid you, etc. And we got into another conversation about Iraq and about Ellen, in which case in my head it's like, keep it moderate, keep it moderate, keep it moderate. I want to talk about what is taking place in Syria. Honestly, talk about it. Not like the mainstream media is talking about it. Honestly, talk about it. Welcome to Soapbox After Dark. Yeah, that's called a fuck up. I hope you guys are doing okay today. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is Soapbox After Dark. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Patron, super chats, the works. This video will be instantly demonetized. I'm not going to try to keep this one long because there are other videos that I want to get to. If you've watched media today at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about, so I don't necessarily need to show the clips of what they've been lavishing praise on. It's been almost like torture porn of sorts. Trump abandoned our allies. Trump abandoned our allies. Trump did abandon the Kurds, like the Kurds were abandoned 7 other times before. The only situation, if we're being honest, where the Kurds were going to get what the Kurds wanted, and they were going to get the socialist utopia, was for the terrorists to win, for the Assad government to implode, and for them to have that particular region, because there is no other force in that particular area. Maybe Turkey is not necessarily going to like it, but ultimately they can lay claim to a particular plot of land if there is no necessarily government. I watched all day media talk about Trump in Syria giving land that belongs to Syria to Turkey. And their issue here wasn't so much that this is strange. How is the United States in another country giving over land to that other country, to another country to which it does not belong? How is it doing that? That's not the framing at all. They accept the premise that America has, for whatever reason, some God-given reason or ability to essentially hand that land over. They accept that framing. Their issue more so was that the American troops are just not going to stay. None of these millionaires are going to put on a tin cap and go and fight, and yet they want American troops to just stay. Several things are true at once. Trump has abandoned people who we consider to be allies. Trump is in Syria. Trump is not moving those troops out of Syria. He's just moving those troops out the way where they won't necessarily engage. It is also true, however, that the United States broke the Middle East. That's a flat fact true. It is true that the United States is more blame in the creation of ISIS than any other country on this planet. That is flat fact true. It is true that the Republicans' talking point, their propaganda, was that the problem with Iraq was that Obama left. So Trump's thought is, okay, we're going to have somebody fill the gap, in which case they put in Turkey. That is a weird solution to this, seeing that Turkey doesn't own Syria and that this is ultimately just a land grab for Erdogan. It is also true that the United States has used quote-unquote terrorism that it created, by the way, because there were no terrorists in Iraq before the United States got there. We did radicalize the Mujahideen with this notion of taking out the Soviets. All of this stuff has us meddling in the Middle East. That is never going to be honestly engaged in the media. They skip right past that point. And even to be specific to Syria, do you realize we were fighting 2 wars? We were using terrorists, literal terrorists, head choppers, rapists, to essentially try to take down Assad in a battering ram. We wanted to do to Syria the exact same thing that did to Libya. You can buy your own black slave in Libya right now. We wanted to do that to Syria. We tried to use terrorists as a battering ram. And even this quote-unquote Free Syrian Army was relatively weak and ultimately had many of their weapons stolen by ISIS. The CIA. Do you realize there were reports in the media where elements backed by the CIA was fighting elements backed by the military? Why? Because one was backing terrorists, again, to take down Assad. I want the media to lavish praise. Lavish all of your praise and your media attention on the terrorists in the areas where you had head choppers and rapists decimating the population for the whims of these geopolitical whims of your government under Obama. That's what I want to see. Show me that. Go with the cameras. Lavish praise on all of these channels following head choppers that we're backing, chopping heads and raping women. That's what I want to see. Show me that. That's the part that I want to see. Talk to the Syrians who are there. And you know what's wild? When Tulsi Gabbard went to talk to them yourself, you smeared her. When she went to actually talk to the Syrians in that particular area to see what those particular Syrians want and what they went through under the terrorists that we were backing, chopping heads, raping women, you smeared her. And then lied and recoiled when she made the point that we were supporting terrorists in the area to try to take down Assad and we need to stop these regime change wars. Show me that. Show me that. Lavish praise on that. Do you know, I think maybe 10 people died today in the incursion by Turkey. A bombing by the United States in Afghanistan killed 39 civilians. You think that shit is going to be on television? No. You think they're going to lavish praise on the hundreds of thousands of people dead in Yemen? They didn't care one iota about that under Obama. Starvation, weaponized disease. You know when they cared? When it was Trump. That's what this is about. It's not so much that propaganda is entirely untrue. Meaning it's not so much that what they're showing you is entirely false. It's more so the lens and the framing and the stuff that they don't show you, the things that they don't tell you, the things that they don't want you to know. That's the issue here. My heart bleeds when I see what is taking place in Syria. It's painful to watch. But all killings are painful to watch. And if you were watching the bombing that took place today by the United States and those 39 people laying dead, you will also feel some kind of way. If you were watching the starvation and the disease and the murdering that took place by Saudis when they were backed by the United States, that would also make your heart bleed. The media doesn't show you those things. If you were watching the head choppers that we were backing, trying to take down the Syrian government, if the media was following them and seeing what they were doing in that country, yes, your heart would bleed for that also. If you were seeing the bombings that were taking place in Iraq when we murdered, for all intents and purposes, 1 million Iraqis, your heart would bleed for that too. If you were there for the drone bombings, 90% of which we didn't even know who we were bombing, yes, all of those things would be painful to watch. They don't show you those things. They don't show you those things. The best outcome is politically out of reach and is not even brought up. Is it possible that Syria should remain in Syria and that the issues that are associated with Syria, you should deal with the person who's head of that government, meaning Assad? Meaning the best outcome, if you're trying to do anything for some level of protection to the Kurds, is not to deal with Turkey. It's not Turkish territory. It is to deal with Assad. That's the outcome. But that's not politically feasible because in the United States, Assad is with the Russians and Trump doesn't necessarily want to touch that rail. Politically, the best outcome is out of reach. If Assad and working with Assad ends up with this kind of socialist utopia Rojava, great. If it doesn't, great. It's not my country. I honestly don't care. I'm not being a hard ass from the standpoint of people being injured and everything else. Again, my heart bleeds. It kills me to watch that. But I also realize that this is being cut in a particular way for that very specific effect. And that the larger questions are not asked. The larger perspective is not given. And our role in that country has not been for the betterment of that country. We've done bad things in many of those countries in the Middle East. And the notion that the media is acting like we're some kind of saviors. You've lost your mind. If those people in the media care that much about Syria, hey, start your own Abraham Lincoln's brigade. Put on your tin hats. You have money. You guys are millionaires. You can afford it. Go over there and help the Kurds. Otherwise, bring our troops home. Give them their parade and call that shit a day. And let the issues pertaining to Syria remain in Syria. There may be other ways that you can try to assist in this regard. We don't need to be there. It's not our country. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. When are you taking calls and guests? I'm taking calls on Sunday. I enjoyed it last time, so. Like, share, subscribe. Yes, this was an angry day. A very angry day. It's all a circus. None of that stuff is real. All of this is a farce. Like, to have a conversation about the Houston Rockets and to not understand that Hong Kong is a sore spot for a cultural issue. Meaning, I don't even know if there's a comparison per se. If the United States lost a particular territory, and by the way, that's not just China. Look back at the military history where France and Germany were at a war. Germany takes a bit of territory because it knows France culturally believes it should have that territory and uses that land to bleed France dry or to bleed them white because they know that France wants it. It's not even a major political or military thing. They just know that from a cultural standpoint, it is a sore spot for France. That's not engaged honestly. Hong Kong is a sore spot. Why? Because it shows a point in China's history where they were weak and powerless and unable to stop Western powers from stealing their territory. And now these guys are out there burning Chinese flags and raising American flags and singing the Pledge of Allegiance. That's fucking insane. Now, this is not me saying that I'm against them pushing for democracy. By the same token, I'm honest enough to fucking say that at the very least China has a point. And Chinese mainland have every right to get pissed off at something that they consider to be a problem. It's not that the people are lemmings, it's that the people have a cultural memory. Just like we would have a cultural memory. For fuck's sake, they changed the name of French fries to freedom fries when France wouldn't go along with that shitty bullshit war. But yeah, we don't need to have an empathetic cultural memory of the things that take place elsewhere. Yes, I was angry today. I was massively angry today. Bring our troops home. Trump is not doing that. He should. Bring our troops home. If your argument is that we got rid of ISIS, okay, fuck it. Let's go with that. Bring our troops home. If you really want to deal with Syria, honestly, you have to deal with Assad. You know, the one person who I haven't heard mentioned today, Assad. They talked about Turkey. They talked about the United States. They talked about Trump. They're talking about land that doesn't belong to either party. Astonishing. It's utterly astonishing. I've never seen, like, it's all a farce. Like, you're watching TV and you're like, they're lying. They're lying outright. Across the board. Every story that they hit on today, they lied about. Whether they were talking about Trump and Ukraine and stuff. And yeah, Trump, you know, I don't know if Trump is going to get himself impeached. Trump has been saying things that have been off the fucking reservation. By the same token, the framing that the White House should participate in an impeachment hearing that is outright and entirely partisan is weird. At which point does the defense work with the prosecution? Why would the defense work with the prosecution? And yet, the media's framing of this is the Democratic Party is just trying to get to the bottom of X. This is after running a conspiracy theory that wasn't founded to be true and still ran with the conspiracy theory. And now they moved on to the next item. The media runs with this as if nothing to see here, folks. All of this is above board. It's propaganda. That's my point. Do you know who Pablo Miller is? Many people in the UK don't either, because the media in the UK put a D notice in order to shut that notion of Pablo Miller's name ever coming to bubbling up. Why? Because the UK media didn't want the people within the population to ask questions about Pablo Miller and his relationship with Christopher Steele. UK. They wanted to hide the ball. In India, they cracked down in Kashmir. They revoked, Article 370 or whatever it's called. And the autonomous region of Kashmir, the only Muslim region, gets whisked away. They fled it with troops, and not just fled with troops, they burlap sack thousands. And the people who they are burlap sacking are just regular people in many respects. Business owners, activists, essentially anybody that would bitch about the fact that they were being essentially invaded and taken over. India ran this as if terrorists were being taken out of the country for good measure. Everyone else ran this as, oh my God, India is burlap sacking random people in Kashmir and is running through a brutal crackdown. You think India media ran it? No, they didn't. They did not. Their media ran, everything is okay. Everything is all right. Now, we look out at the media and we say, wow, that was pretty biased. And we even look at the UK, wow, that was pretty biased. It's a good thing our media doesn't do that. How would you know? How would you know? And I'm telling you that every story that ran today was propaganda. And I sat there and watched all of it. Rageful, angry, talking to the woman who I was rageful and angry about with a plague of guilt about the fact that I was rageful and angry. Reality is fucked up. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.